Okay, welcome back. Last we left off, we were heading into the game. This is what this video is about. The game is what basically the story between God and Lucifer is going on. When you understand that, you can understand the game that we are playing. And then when you understand the game that we are playing, it sets us up for the doctrinal changes, which we got to go into the book of Job, the original intent of Job. If you read the King James Bible before all the other translations, it was the original English translation, it's one of the best ones to read for that book. But it's the interpretations that were changed in schools and in the theology schools and seminaries and even in churches. They teach it differently. So what all this is for is leading up to, so I can do those what were the original intent of those stories. So I have to do all the backstory, and then once those are undone, we can then do the higher levels of the scales. So going into it, we got to go over what was Lucifer's job. Lucifer, which is the archangel, what was Lucifer's job? His job, as we know, it said he was a covering cherub. Covering. And it said, but even though it said he was a covering cherub, it also says that every precious stone was his covering. So he was the cover, but he also had precious stones covering him. We listed about 10 of those. They're all different colors of the rainbow. So that was on him. He also had, it said, pipes and tabrets. That's like a tambourine. Tabrets. Okay? Those were also his covering, right? So what was his job? Well, I learned in seminary, in theology school that, and I also heard in church that his job was, well, he was just the archangel and leading worship. And that's pretty much it. No, I mean, there was way more than that. So his job was to cover. And you cover, to do that, you do that by preaching, teaching, proclaiming, explaining, by you plant, okay? And when you plant something in someone, you put a seed in them, and when it sprouts up, it covers them round about, okay? And that covering, actually, when you plant those words, and by preaching and teaching those doctrines, those wisdom, because it said also that he was full of wisdom, and he was perfect in beauty. Now, was that just for him? Is that only him? That was only supposed to be him? Well, God invested into one of these archangels to be able to spread that to the other ones. It was in a progressional model. It was in a 7-level progressional model, just like it is today. God is the same. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So here you have to understand, since he's full of wisdom, he has to give that wisdom through a particular way, and that was through precious stones. If you think stones are only these gems, that's where you're mistaken. And this is where a lot of people get carnal minded when they read this, and they read it too as a matter of fact. They don't see into the spiritual concepts. They're looking at for face value. So these gems or stones is what he was supposed to cover them. And this was also this is what he was full of. This was his covering on him. So what was on him? These stones were called the stones of fire. In essence, he was so close to God, he had God's secrets, that he was supposed to spread these secrets to the other angels. But here's the thing about it. What it does is after he begins to spread it, it begins to network them all together, and a stone is a network. So it looks like a He was to create a world wide web. We know spider web looks just like a network, right? So, and that's what, if you can make a web into a another design, it would be a gem. It's the exact same pattern. If you look at a spider web in the corner, if you just made that thing into a sphere, it is a gem. It's a stone. Its geometry of its patterns are in harmony one with another. It's this interrelated system. So he was to lay these stones, or this wisdom that was going to set these other angels on fire and begin to build that. And what it did was it created a tent. God stretches out the heavens like a tent. So this tent is a tent of fire, or a stone of fire. And when it's also the web. A web is a tent. And so he was to do that. What happened then, as they would get this wisdom, and they would eat this wisdom, and it would become part of them, it would begin to send a praise up. A praise would go up for it, and then a fire would come back down. And that created, these two things created a wheel. That wheel is also what we called a tron, like electronic, which would set up God's throne. What that did was, the heavens, God was trying to expand or extend or stretch out the heavens. Not only was he stretching them out like a tent to cover, but he was trying to expand heaven, and so God can make his dominion bigger. All of this throne is dominion. See that dome right there? See the dome up here? So God was trying to put his whiz or his viz or his vices, his devices, or his imaginations, or his counsel, or his image and likeness, by preaching and teaching his devices through his wisdom into as this tent structure to get dominion and to stretch out. He was basically multiplying himself. That's what he's doing. But he's not multiplying himself in that he is everybody. He was creating brand new beings that he could fill and be upon and live upon them. And what it did, it made this perfect wheel that was, a wheel is a stone. Every stone is a wheel within a wheel within a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Right? And that is, that thing lights up like fire. This right here, it sends a vapor up into the air, then the fire comes back down and it lights all the angels up. That's still God's plan. So what happened though, so Lucifer, as we know, that he broke that wheel. So now he didn't want the praise to go to God, the wheel to go to God. He tried to redirect this wheel and make it go towards himself. Instead of going up and come back down, he's like, instead of going up there, let's redirect it and just, here's Lucifer. Instead of going up here, let's redirect it over here to me. And he wouldn't give it back. That was the problem. He magnified himself and he spoke something, and because he had all these, what made him beautiful, perfect in beauty, was that he maxed out all the stones. He had all of them. He had all the stones given to him, all the wisdom. And what it does, as the wisdom's given to you, it produces this infrastructure inside of you, kind of like the neural pathways in your mind are the setup as a stone. We break dance, right? When we learn how to break dance, when we do our belly mills and then our windmills, and then we do our stab, which has stab mills, we stab, and then we do these air swipes, and then these air flares, It's a 7 level gem that starts off down here, but builds up to the air to where you're basically doing windmills in the air and flipping around, doing this acro flipping and stuff. But all that is these geometric patterns of this scale. But a scale is a wheel, is a stone, and that whole thing, that model's in everything. But that's, where are we at? Let's see. It's something I want to cover real quick while I'm on that thread. Is that a stone, which is geometry. See, you got the word met in there. Met means like matrix. And matrix is a grid. That's a grid. So you got, a grid is also a table. Like your times tables. You'll see that your times tables, math, you'll see that times is made from these stones. We're getting to that. But those are made. Stone is also a scale. So a geometric scale. That's 1 through 7 of how to do that scale, and it's also a key, which was also a key known as your chi, or your energy, or your inner G, inner God, right? That's your chi, that's your keys. And these open doors and closed doors, that's why it's all the same thing. And it's also a framework. It's your frames. So times, keys, scales, frames. We're going to get into all that. It's this entire thing that we're painting. It's the presence of God. That's what this is. The presence of God was to spread out. Because where the presence of God is, the wisdom of God is, the beauty of God is. It's inside that, is inside the presence of God is all the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that begins to is creative power that makes everything. Okay, so now when he broke all this grid, he created something new. It was no longer this tent. The light went out, so now the opposite of this tent was called a veil. He made this veil. It was to make you, no longer would make you see, you'd be blind, right? And that's what was coming in. This veil was known as the shadow of death, also known as darkness. So this leads us up to Genesis chapter 1, where it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And then Genesis 1:2 says, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. What is the face of the deep? Because the face of the deep was there before anything else. Because through day 1 through 7, God began to build this infrastructure of the earth. And including the firmament and all the other stuff, right? All that stuff comes later. But the face of the deep, what happened was God said, let there be light. And there was light, and it separated the light from the darkness. And so what happened was there was already light in the sense that there was already God, right? But when he casts the devil out, there's now this separation between heaven and where darkness is now. So now he had to put a shield there, a barrier, and that was the face of the deep. It was water. So all this darkness is now separated by this water. But then he had to gather the waters together into the seas. And that's when he began to make the earth. I won't get into that. It's a whole nother story, but we are leading up to that because the infrastructure of the earth is very important. It's in the secret art of astronomy, and we got to touch it, but I can't build it now because I may lose some of my viewers if I say it too soon because it gets crazy. But it all makes sense after we build the progression to it. So back on here. So God is the same yesterday and today and forever. So God still wants to make this tent. But now he has this problem of this veil of the shadow of death and darkness. So now God made the earth with dichotomies. And so this is why he made the 2 trees in Garden of Eden. He had to solve the rogue problem, but he also had to. Well, I had to continue my plan because I spoke it. I'm going to continue to put my covering on somebody, and I'm going to continue to stretch out and spread it out. So this is why he made Adam. But he made Adam in the image and likeness of God, but he pulled everything female out of him through that rib and made 2 of them. And that it took 2 to make a tent. You need a stake. I'll have to erase some of this soon, but you have to need a stake, and you need cords. So if you have 2 stakes and you put and you tie them together, you can begin to stretch out a tent. Okay, this is where we talked about a long time ago. 101 Dalmatians. This is why in Matrix, when Neo knocks on the door, it's 101. You got where 2 or more gathered together. There, I am in the midst. That's God's name is I am, right? So this is also in the IOY with that movie that came out. What's it called? Do you know? Ready Player One. Got my peanut gallery over here. So it's like the IOY those are Illuminati symbols, but really more than that, they're secret art symbols. Okay, so you can they're letting you know that they're trained in all this stuff. So I'm gonna erase some of this stuff. So God still has to make his tent, but now the devil, he's still a tent maker. You have to understand that. The devil is still a tent maker. What does that mean? Well, he has to build a veil. He has to build a tent. He needs stakes. He needs cords. And we know that stakes are beings. A stake is, in essence, his stakes were the angels. Well, now God's making something brand new because he has his angels. God lost a third of them, but now he has man. So man becomes, and woman together, they each are a stake. So as you anchor, this is why it says that hope is the anchor of the soul. You have to now, it's in Hebrews, the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, you have to now anchor these stones, and there's 7 levels to those stones, which, remember, remember, it's knowledge, but it's also revelation knowledge of the ways of God. And they strengthen you. They give you strength. Okay? So now these are also cords. These cords are channels that channels you to this person. It's a channel because what flows through here is energy. It's a spirit will flow here, which is God's Holy Spirit. He'll flow from one person to another person, and these two will be on one mind, one accord. And so that fire connects. And then, and then a bigger fire, and it connects, and they all connect together and creates this giant. It's the same thing. So that's still God's plan. But the reason why he made flesh is because when you network all these people together, and now he made the flesh and the spirit together, and the heaven and the earth together, to where it now becomes a shell that if you fill it, because it says Christ will fill all in all. He's to fill everything. The plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, the heavens, the earth. When the whole earth, heaven and earth light up like a star, and look, you see all those colors of the rainbows, and that's the end of the game, it will eventually make the devil go down into the pit. That's where that furnace is in the bottom of the earth, right? That's called the bottoms of the oceans. At the bottoms of the oceans, underneath the bottoms of the mountains, underneath the ocean is where the pit of hell is, and that's where the devil is going to be made, or that's where he's going to go. So, but now we understand now that the devil, since he's a builder and he's laying all this foundation of these stones and everything, he has to he has to make, number one, he said he's going to sit in God's throne, so he still has to get there. That's the game that we're leading up to. That's going to be broke down in a lot of detail. He has to build the shadow of death. The shadow of death is a pyramid system where he does teach these secrets of how to build stakes, how to build stakes with chords. So I said forming chords. If you know the secret arts, you know the dark arts, because you want to make a friend when you make your sales. Why do you want to make a friend? Because you need people, right? But you want to make that friend, give them that sale so they can be underneath you. Multi-level marketing. And now you're going to be at the top, right? You want to be just like Lucifer. But God's system makes us all, God's system was to make a bunch of Lucifers before he fell. And so where everybody was ahead. This is what a four square is. A four square is everybody's equal. If you read the book of Revelation of Jesus Christ, the heavenly kingdom that comes is 12,000 furlongs by 12,000 furlongs by 12,000 furlongs everywhere, right? That's his dimension. That's the number for government. God's government is going to sit on people. It's his presence. But the devil's government doesn't look like that. It's this. That's why we have pyramid systems. This is why the Tower of Babel, which we'll get into that story, and this is why Babylon. And this is actually all we know. This is where your pyramid schemes, your money schemes come from. This is where banking comes from and all that stuff, where you want to deplete your people, because now the stone of fire is that was his covering. Now his covering is a stone of emptiness. It's supposed to empty you out or deplete you through devour. Now, devour sounds we're consumers. Like devour sounds kind of mean. So you don't want to really devour people. You want to, I want to give them a chance to be successful, right? But under me. You don't tell them that you're devouring. You're traveling the world off of their dime, and that is devouring someone else. Well, so it's wrong to have people underneath you? Sort of. Depends on if you're sucking the life out of them. Now, people are underneath you as like children, but they're supposed to become your equal. You know, when children are underneath you, as there's a hierarchy structure. Even in the Foursquare, there's a hierarchy structure. As we know, there's a day 1, day 2, day 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But everyone's supposed to look the same, where the first will be last and the last will be first. That's where a 12th grader and a first grader, the first grader catches up to the 12th grader. You can't tell who was first and who was last because they both become 12th graders. They look the same. That's a true hierarchy. Not like I always keep you stupid, I don't tell you my secrets, and I always prosper off of your back. Okay, that's the whole system to get into that. And that's why that's here today. That sets us up for the game. And that game, last thing I'll say with it, and we'll do the game for part 2, what's still being built today is known as the circuit, because these are circuits of heaven. These are called the circuits of heaven. This is the invisible infrastructure. This is all the mind sciences. The mind sciences is pretty much what it is, but it is a revelation of Jesus Christ. The circuits of heaven is also known as the ordinances of heaven. And let's see, do I have? Yep, it's to tether us together, or through a cord, right? Tether us together in our countenances. So angels can move up and down, to and fro in the midst of stones of fire, and if the devil makes the empty ones, the devil that's the stones of emptiness. Those mindsets, the dark arts, produces a bad energy on you, and he needs to tether them together in this fashion, versus being tethered together in this fashion. What God does, they need to be tethered together in this fashion, so the devils can come up out of the pit and they can rule this world, and this whole earth gets filled with the shadow of death. That is the Lucifer's plan. God made it to where, okay, let's see if you can. The whole game This is what we're leading up to, is a battle, and it's a race. It's like an arms race. Let's see if Lucifer, if you can build your shadow of death and take over my throne before I can build my tent of glory and take over and cage your throne into this very small little pit. That's the game that we're in. I'm going to break that down in the next video. And I think, I just want to make sure. Yep, I think that's everything. I'm going to break that down in the next video. We're going to go over that. Stick with us because there's way more to come. Thanks so much.